ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः. Hare Krishna. So we welcome once again everyone, starting with our session for today. Nana Shastra Vichanik Nipano Sadhama Samstapako Lokanam Hitakarino Tribhuvane Mahanyo Sharanyakaro Radha Krishna Padaravindra Bhajana Nahandena Mattali Vande Rupa Sanatano Raghujugo Shri Jiva Gopalako. Starting with a shloka recitation together. Anya vilashita shunyam jnanam karmadhyanavratam anukulyena krishnanu shilanam bhakti uttama sarvapadi vinirmuktam tatparatvena nirmalam rishikena rishikesha sevanam bhaktiruchyate atha Shri Krishna Namadi Nabhavid Grayamandriye Sevan Mukhe Jivado Swayam Eva Spurati Yadaha Anasaktas Vishayam Yatharam Upayunjataha Nirbandha Krishna Sambandhe Yuktam Vairagyam Uchyate Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we are on the fifth episode or the fifth lesson of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. We'll do a quick recap of what we have discussed in the previous lesson. So we started our discussion from the chapter 1 of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, where there's a discussion on the Samanya Bhakti. Samanya doesn't mean a regular Bhakti, but the general description of pure devotional service are mentioned, and wherein the 6 characteristics of Bhakti are described. So those 6 characteristics of pure devotional service we had highlighted, and in that we had discussed the very first characteristic titled as Kleshagni. We had briefly discussed how the Krishna Conscious movement performs the highest welfare activity, but we'll spend more time on it today in our discussion. So the 6 characteristics of pure devotional service: Kleshagni Subhadha Moksha Lagattu Krasudallabha Sandharananda Visheshatma Shri Krishna Karshani Chasa. These are the 6 characteristics: Kleshagni, Shubhada, Moksha, Lagutukrit, Sudullabha, Sandharanand, Visheshatma, Shri Krishna Akarshanichasa. Out of these 6 characteristics, we have discussed the first characteristic, Kleshagni, in detail as described by Srila Rupa Goswami and through the purports of Srila Prabhupada from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So, suffering was the subject matter that we discussed last time. So, what is the cause of suffering? What is the foremost cause of suffering? Or what is the root cause of suffering? Anyone? If we just do a quick revision and then we proceed ahead.
Desire.
Okay.
Desire.
Yes. Desire. 1 second, please. So, correct. Desire is, but as Srila Rupa Goswami says, it all begins with avidya. Avidya, what is avidya? Avidya is forgetfulness of who am I, forgetfulness of the spiritual identity. Identifying with this gross body and with this world is called as avidya. And because of that avidya, we cultivate material desires. And a desire is just one step before person commits an action. For anything that we do, the fundamental, the foundation is a desire. And being in this world, like that, a person develops the sinful desires and then he engages in a sinful activity. And as a reaction to the sinful activity, by the laws of material nature, by the laws of karma, we get suffering. That was a discussion last time. Okay, so let's go back to the slide deck and we'll just summarize the subject matter, what we discussed last time. So, relief from material distress, kleshagni. The causes of suffering and the solution for the suffering was discussed by Srila Rupa Goswami. What are the causes of suffering? The foremost cause of suffering is avidya, ignorance. Where is the zoom? And from avidya comes bijam, sinful desires. And from sinful desire, from bijam comes papam, sinful activities. When a person performs sinful activities, there are two kinds of reactions are produced, which can be called as aprarabdham. Or from aprarabdham, two activities, two results happen. One is kutam. Kutam refers to sinful disposition where we want to engage. And then a particular desire that is called as bijam. We had given an example last time of somebody, let's say, had done a stealing in the previous life, because the mind continues on to the next destination. So in this lifetime, the person has a desire from last time because he performed a sinful activity of stealing. So he'll have this kutam, the desire for stealing. But now it becomes bijam when that desire becomes very specific, that I want to steal this particular thing. And when it gets narrowed down to this particular object to steal, then an action performs. Then action is performed, that becomes papam, like that. So this is a self, you can say binding cycle, where if a desire is there and action is performed, then that action further creates a desire and it becomes a habit and you cannot come out of it. So that was the discussion. And aprarabdha creates prarabdha. Prarabdha refers to the reactions that we are undergoing today. So, which means suffering. What is a solution? As Srila Rupa Goswami talks about it, of course, for every stage there are different aspects of solution. To alleviate suffering, we can perform certain kind of charity, we can perform some kind of sacrifices, etc., oblations, other things. But to destroy the root cause, which means avidya, or even to get rid of desires, bhakti is the only means. And we had discussed about from the examples of Ajamil and many other things that Prabhupada mentions. So prarabdha, let's say the low birth, low birth can be counteracted. In other words, we quoted this particular verse from 3rd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Somebody takes to the chanting of the holy names of the Lord, which means he has already performed all kind of sacrifices, austerities and penances in his previous life, because of which he is able to take to the chanting of the holy names of the Lord. So the lower birth and anything, those kind of, little things can be counteracted by it. Padma Puran says all 4 effects are vanquished when somebody takes to the chanting or somebody takes to bhakti. Sarva dharman parityaja, Lord Shri Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that I will protect a person, free him from all kind of sinful reactions. Then aprarabdha, which have not manifested. So these were the other references which were quoted by Srila Rupa Goswami. Which has not yet manifested, which is going to happen to us in future life. The fire of bhakti burns up also those things, those reactions which have not yet manifested. It not only alleviates suffering from present life, but also from the future life. How do we deal with desires when they really push us into doing sinful activities? We have discussed one principle that we should tolerate those sinful desires. That is one way of stopping the cycle. The desire to action, action to desire, like that. Bijam, which refers to desire particularly. We had discussed from Ajamil section as Rupa Goswami quotes him. Ajamil section where Parikshit Maharaj asked a question to Sukdev Goswami. So this particular point was discussed. And avidya, ignorance, can be uprooted. Krishna speaks about it again and again in Bhagavad Gita by transcendental knowledge like that. So this was the high level discussion last time. And today we're going to begin our discussion from the topic titled as Shubhadha, all auspiciousness. Srila Rupa Goswami describes pure devotional service is the beginning of all auspiciousness. What it means? Let's take a look how Srila Rupa Goswami describes Shubhadha. And he writes in the first chapter, 27th verse, Shubhani Prininam Sarva Jagatam Anuraktata Sadguna Sukham Iti Adini Akhyatani Manishibhi. So here, Srila Rupa Goswami describes following parameters or following characteristics of all auspiciousness. Sarva Jagatam Prininam. Sarva Jagatam Prininam means you can say love for everyone or compassion for everyone. Everyone means not humans. Everyone refers to every living entity. We'll discuss about it. Anuraktata, this bhakti attracts everyone. Sadgunaha, it bestows good qualities. The performer of bhakti develops all the good qualities. Prahlad Maharaj says the same thing in the 5th canto Srimad Bhagavatam. And Sukham, it bestows superior happiness. And all these four together are said to be all auspiciousness. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada, in the discussion of this quality or characteristic of Subhadha, he talks about how Krishna consciousness is the only auspicious thing in this Kali Yuga, the dark age of Kali Yuga. And then Srila Prabhupada makes a point, it is so important for the devotees to share this wisdom of Krishna consciousness, the knowledge of Krishna consciousness, the gift of Krishna consciousness with everyone, because this Krishna consciousness of bhakti alone can bring auspiciousness in the lives of everyone. So before we look back at the presentation, we'll little bit read from the book and then we'll come back here. Hare Krishna. So coming back to the Zoom account. So please open your book, chapter number 1, and you'll find the title of the paragraph as Krishna Consciousness is all auspiciousness. This is almost after 3 pages in your first chapter. Flip through 3 pages. On the 4th page, you will see the second paragraph with the title, Krishna Consciousness is all auspicious. All right, Harina Prabhu is sharing the screen. Great. Somebody would like to read it? Naveen Prabhu, please go ahead.
Srila Rupa Goswami has given a definition of auspiciousness. He says that actual auspiciousness means welfare activities for all the people of the world. At the present moment, groups of people are engaged in welfare activities in terms of society, community, or nation. There is even an attempt in the form of United Nations for World Health Activity. But due to the shortcomings of limited national activities, such as General Mass Welfare Program, for the whole world is not practically possible. The Krishna Consciousness movement, however, is so nice that it can render the highest benefit to the entire human race. Everyone can be attracted by this movement and everyone can feel the result. Therefore, Rupa Goswami and other learned scholars agreed that a broad propaganda program for the Krishna Consciousness movement of devotional service all over the world is the highest humanitarian welfare activity. How the Krishna Consciousness
Please go ahead.
How the Krishna Consciousness movement can attract the attention of the whole world, and how each and every man can feel pleasure in this Krishna consciousness is stated in Padma Purana as follows. A person who is engaged in devotional service in full Krishna consciousness is to be understood to be doing the best service to the whole world and to be pleasing everyone in the world. In addition to human society, he's teasing even the trees and animals because they also become attracted by such movement. A practical example of this was shown by Lord Chaitanya when he was traveling through the forest of Jharikhanda in central India for spreading his Sankirtan movement. The tigers, the elephant, the deers, and all other wild animals joined him and were participating in their own ways by dancing and chanting Hare Krishna. Furthermore, a person engaged in Krishna consciousness, acting in devotional service, can develop all good qualities that are generally found in the demigods. It is said by Sukadev Goswami in the fifth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 18th chapter, verse 12, My dear king, person who has unflinching faith in Krishna and are without any duplicity can develop all the good qualities of the demigods. On account of a devotee, high grade of Krishna consciousness, even the demigods like to live with him, and therefore it can be understood that the qualities of the demigods have developed within his body.
Hare Krishna. So, as this is a summary study that Srila Prabhupada have written, so we'll take a look through our presentation how these four qualities are manifested here. But right now, Prabhupada is talking about, he's already established how Krishna Consciousness movement is rendering the highest service because it brings auspiciousness in the lives of an individual and the lives of everyone. Then Prabhupada said how the another aspect of auspiciousness, how it attracts everyone. So Prabhupada quoted the example of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu traveling through Jharikhanda forest, and how all the animals got attracted, so much so that they forgot animosity between each other. And then the other paragraph, the next paragraph that Naveen Prabhu was just reading, with which we just paused, is about how Krishna consciousness or the Bhakti produces good qualities. So, like that, para by paragraph, Prabhupada is defining that. So, in the next paragraph, Prabhupada continues the discussion on this subject of how Krishna consciousness produces good qualities. So, in the next paragraph, Prabhupada says, those who are not practicing Krishna consciousness, they could be highly educated, double PhDs, could be situated in respectable positions in the societies. However, when you look at their character and their qualities, would be almost on the platform or even lower than that of animals. Very interesting, huh? So I'm just going to read out the third line of the next paragraph. He may be highly educated from the academic point of view, but in the actual field of his activities, he can be seen to be baser than the animals. So in other words, Prabhupada now begin to talk about education. Prabhupada says we have many educated people in the world today, and most of these educated people are most uneducated in the subject matter of character, integrity, honesty, etc., their behavior. And then Prabhupada in the next paragraph talks about, he gives a comparison. He says, whereas in Krishna consciousness, a boy or a girl, although may be uneducated, may not be situated in a respectable position or designation, yet they follow four regulatory principles. They do not only four regulatory principles, they don't go to theaters to watch movies, they don't go to pubs or bars to drink intoxication. They live a simple and a pure life. And that's how Prabhupada talk about it, that how even a very well-educated person in the university, from the university, cannot give up illicit sex life or follow four regulatory principles, but a boy and girl who takes to Krishna consciousness, they are able to do so. So Prabhupada says these are the practical proofs of how Krishna conscious person becomes highly developed in good qualities. And then Prabhupada says, we experience that even a young boy in Krishna consciousness is unattached to cinemas, nightclubs, naked dance shows, restaurants, liquor shops, etc. He saves his valuable time from being extravagantly spent in the way of smoking, drinking, and attending theater and dancing. So Shubhada also produces good qualities like that Srila Prabhupada talks about. And now the last paragraph in this discussion, please somebody read out. Prabhupada says, now the modern generation, the people cannot even sit peacefully for half an hour. Santosh Prabhu, your hand is up, please go ahead. One who is not in Krishna consciousness.
Yes. One who is not in Krishna consciousness usually cannot sit silently even for half an hour. The yoga system teaches that if you become silent, you will realize that you are a god. This system may be alright for materialistic persons, but how long will they be able to keep themselves silent? Artificially, they may sit down for so called meditation, but immediately after their yogic performance, they will engage themselves again in such activities as illicit sex life, gambling, meat eating, and many other nonsensical things. But the Krishna consciousness person gradually elevates himself without endeavoring for this so called silent meditation. Simply because he is engaged in Krishna consciousness, he automatically gives up all this nonsense and develops a high character. One develops the highest character by becoming a pure devotee of Krishna. The conclusion is that no one can truly have any good qualities if he is lacking Krishna consciousness.
Hare Krishna. I really like this particular, the last 2-3 paragraphs of discussion. Of course, we may or may not be able to quantify auspiciousness, but at least we can have some understanding when we look within ourselves in terms of developing good qualities, as Srila Prabhupada is talking about it here. How our life was before coming to Krishna consciousness, what kind of desires we had, and how we were so easily dictated by our mind. Our mind has a complete control on us. Whatever mind would desire, would say, we would just follow into it. And today, by the mercy and the strength of Bhakti, by the practice of Krishna consciousness, whatever spiritual strength we have cultivated, we are able to go against the wishes of the mind. Yes or no? That probably has happened for all of us, isn't it? And that is what Srila Prabhupada is talking about. So I don't know if I was discussing here in another forum. So it's good to have a knowledge, but knowledge is not all in all. Let me put this point in form of question. So let's see if you have an answer. Let's see if I have discussed this before. There are many people who are very learned in scriptures. In fact, you may find people doing PhD on the writings of Srila Rupa Goswami, which means they have read Srila Rupa Goswami's literature very thoroughly, far much thoroughly than you and I could ever read it, in one sense. Yet, when it comes to their character, they're still given to lower propensities. So they have all the knowledge, yet they are not able to have a character like what is being described here. What is the missing point for them? Is my question making sense? There are a lot of Vedic scholars also. So all of your hand is already up. So I don't know if your hand is up for this question, your hand is up for reading. So you're going to lower down your hand and then again raise your hand. So I'll make it easy. Okay, Mother Rati Manjari, please go ahead.
Because they have not accepted Lord Krishna as the supreme, that is missing. They have not accepted the supremeness of
Okay, you have to go a little bit more in detail. Let's say even they have accepted Lord Krishna. What's next? Okay, Mother Priya.
Maybe the practical application and
what is
all those.
What is a practical application?
I mean, if we are reading in the book that we need to chant, but we are not chanting. Basically, we know everything theoretically, but we are not actually doing it. So we know we need to offer the food, but somehow we are still stuck in the
Correct. That's the point. Knowing is not enough unless there is an action according to it. That's the point. So we are able to say no to our mind, not only on the strength of knowledge, but on the strength of spiritual strength. On the strength of spiritual strength, I'm going to say, because of practice of Krishna consciousness, we build our spiritual strength. And on the basis of the spiritual strength, we are able to say no. So unless we have a practice of Krishna conscious culture, Krishna conscious practice, we cannot have what Prabhupada is talking about or what Srila Rupa Goswami is saying about it here. So yes, knowledge is essential, but knowledge has to be accompanied with an action. Knowledge has to be accompanied with a transformation. Is it making sense? Therefore, Srila Prabhupada gave us a 16 rounds of Hare Krishna Mahamantra minimum every day. There are many spiritual organizations in India, many spiritual organizations. Even if you go to Vrindavan, there are so many very elevated personalities, very advanced in their Krishna consciousness. And they may have hundreds and thousands of disciples and followers. But when you meet with those followers, they really don't have any, if you do just a comparison in terms of their individual life and life of even a new devotee in ISKCON, you'll find that even a new devotee in ISKCON is far much more sober and controlled than these people who may be connected to certain spiritual organization for years and decades together. The reason is because most of the spiritual organizations do not have any set program every day, which they have to practice. Maybe some may say follow 4 agreed principles, then they do not tell them to follow particular sadhanas every day. Srila Prabhupada said we have to chant 16 rounds like that, morning program, etc., Bhagavatam study like that. So that's the subject matter here of auspiciousness. Let's go back to the presentation. We'll break it into the 4 qualities and a little bit review it once again. So presentation is there now. Great. Shubhada, all auspiciousness, Sarva Jagatam Prininam. Compassion for everyone, we have already spoken. Let's take a look at the first quality. Compassion for everyone and attracts everyone. Srila Rupa Goswami has given a definition of auspiciousness. He says that actual auspiciousness means welfare activities for all the people of the world. And Srila Prabhupada, while talking about this, he gave an example of a Jharikanda incident of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In Adi Keshav temple, there is a picture in which there is a tiger who's keeping a hand on a cow, and the calf is drinking milk from the tiger, whereas the tiger's cub is drinking from cow. And the scene is of Vrindavan forest. When Krishna was playing a flute, so it has been shown that how, for tiger, cow's flesh is the favorite food. And here, tiger has forgotten the animosity and the cow has forgotten that fear of the tiger. They're literally embracing each other, and the cub is drinking milk from the cow and the calf is from the tiger, like that. There's a beautiful picture there. Second, compassion for everyone attracts everyone is on the subject matter of attracts. Rupa Goswami and other scholars agree that a broad propaganda program for the Krishna consciousness movement or devotion service all over the world is the highest humanitarian welfare activity. Third, Prabhupada talks about Sadgunaha, or not Prabhupada, Srila Rupa Goswami describes third characteristic of all auspiciousnesses, produces all the good qualities. This is what Prabhupada talked about. We have already discussed from the purport that a Krishna conscious boy who is taken to Krishna conscious culture, any boy and girl, they give up all their bad habits naturally. How many of you had that experience actually? Just whatever things, were troubling us, let's say maybe a drinking of a coffee or tea, or let's say maybe onion garlic, which we thought was very difficult to give up. Very difficult to give up, and we struggled with it for maybe days, months, years, whatnot. Suddenly one morning we got up, the end. It just didn't bothered us. How many, right? Nobody pushed you through it. How many of us have the experience? All of us would have the experience. It just suddenly disappeared. Didn't had that. That's the point. Produces all good qualities. Practical proof. And then the fourth point was Sukham, bestows superior happiness. So this subject matter, Prabhupada didn't discuss much in what we have read, but when you go to the next paragraph, title is Happiness in Krishna Consciousness, Prabhupada is going to speak there. So let's go back to the book first, and then we'll come back here. So now, Kleshagni Shubhada. Shubhada, all auspicious qualities and characteristics we discussed. Now, Kleshagni Subhada, Moksha Lagatukrit. Moksha Lagatukrit means the happiness derived in Krishna consciousness is such that person even deride the idea or the desire for moksha. He doesn't even want moksha now. And that subject matter is clubbed along with the happiness that is a subpart of Shubhada in the title called as Happiness in Krishna Consciousness in your book. So let's read from the book. Please read the first 3 paragraphs of the section titled as Happiness in Krishna Consciousness, and I'll give you the summary of it. Please go ahead. Madalila Nandini, go ahead. You can read it.
Hare Krishna Bhakti.
Hare Krishna.
Happiness in Krishna Consciousness. Srila Rupa Goswami has analyzed the different sources of happiness. He has divided happiness into 3 categories, which are: first, happiness derived from material enjoyment; second, happiness derived by identifying oneself with the Supreme Brahman; and third, happiness derived from Krishna consciousness. In the Tantra Shastra, Lord Shiva speaks to his wife, Sati, in this way, my dear wife, a person who has surrendered himself at the lotus feet of Govinda and who has thus developed real consciousness can be very easily awarded all the perfections desired by the impersonalists, and beyond this he can enjoy the happiness achieved by the pure devotees. Happiness derived from pure devotional service is the highest because it is eternal. The happiness derived from material perfection or understanding oneself to be Brahman is inferior because it is temporary. There is no preventing one's falling down from material happiness, and there is even every chance of falling down from the spiritual happiness derived out of identifying oneself with the impersonal Brahman.
Hare Krishna.
It has been...
Yeah, we'll pause here. Yeah. So Prabhupada says there are 3 levels of happiness. One level of happiness derived from sense gratification within this world. Second is with moksha, Brahman realization, in other words, in the sense of merging with Brahman. And third is from Krishna consciousness. And Srila Prabhupada said the happiness derived through Krishna consciousness is eternal. What to speak about the happiness derived from moksha? The happiness derived from sense gratification is temporary. Even happiness derived from moksha, particularly the Sayuchya Mukti or impersonal liberation, is also temporary because there's all possibility of falling down. After describing this a little bit, then Srila Prabhupada talks about mystic powers. So, how many of you, if given an opportunity, would like to have some mystic opulence? Let me have a mystic power. As soon as I raise my eyebrows, everyone becomes totally attracted to me. You know, they just like, or maybe, you know, mystic power that as soon as I upload my first video on YouTube, it becomes so viral. I'm on the news tomorrow for creating the most biggest viral video, or different. So if you look at the core of our hearts, you'll realize that there's a deep attraction for all these, mystic opulences. You agree or disagree? I'm not asking you to vote. I'll consider by default it's there because it's there. We want all this thing. So Prabhupada dedicates the next page, literally next 1.5 page, on this mystic opulences, and Prabhupada really butchered them. Prabhupada says how useless these all are. So we'll come to it. Let me go to the presentation and let me a little bit discuss from there. So we're on the presentation, right? Yeah. So there are 3 kinds of happiness, as Srila Prabhupada is talking here. Happiness from material enjoyment, happiness from identification with Brahman, and happiness derived from Krishna consciousness. Srila Prabhupada speaks on the life of an ISKCON devotee. This is from a lecture by Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada says, these Krishna conscious boys and girls, in 60 centers, they're living in the best houses. They're eating the best food. They're in the best consciousness. They've got the best hope. Everything best. Their features of body is best. What material happiness do you want more than this? In other words, we are the greatest sense gratifiers. And we are actually truly able to fulfill our senses. They've got wife, children, happiness, home, everything full. So material happiness is nothing to a Krishna conscious person. Material happiness will roll at his feet saying, please, please take me. There's no need for asking for it. Simply be steady and ask Krishna. please engage me in your service. Then your satisfaction will automatically come. Don't bother for material happiness. So, Srila Prabhupada this explains this is what a life of an ISKCON devotee. Krishna provides him everything, he has best of everything, and he just do not get attracted to material happiness. He remains consistent, does not get distracted. As we practice bhakti, Srila Rupa Goswami and our acharyas have described how through the practice of bhakti also weeds are created. This is described in Srimad Bhagavatam also. Weeds for puja, labh, pratishtha. One weed that comes because of the practice of bhakti is a lot of respect. And then we develop this habit of, desiring to be respected. It's interesting. How many of you remember before coming to Krishna consciousness, what kind of respect was given to us? And now what kind of respect is given to us? Isn't it? There's a huge difference. Now, earlier before coming to Krishna consciousness, as if we never existed. Nobody gave a damn about us. Even our relatives really didn't bother too much about us. But now when you come to Krishna consciousness, you have been practicing for a while, people will come and say, Prabhuji, Mataji, Mataji, aapke ashirwad, please pray for us, please bless me. They'll offer you obeisances and whatnot. So slowly and gradually, there is this weed develops that I need to be respected. People should give me a respect. They should offer respect to me like that. So this is, of course, I'm not going to get into the subject matter of this puja la pratishtha, but we need to be careful, as Prabhupada is very clearly saying, if we just remain focused, then we will get access to that happiness of Krishna consciousness. Of course, we are getting some happiness from Krishna consciousness, no doubt about it, but we'll be able to get that access to the eternal bliss, receiving which all these things would look futile. Let's talk about one kind of happiness which is a need for all of us, where we really desire some kind of mystic opulences. This subject matter of mystic opulence will be discussed later on also. So Prabhupada talks about it, that there was one German who had visited India, and one yogi showed him his magic like walking on the river. So he said, see, I have performed 20 years of tapasya, and with this, I'll show you a mystic opulence. And he said, what? He said, see. And he walked onto the river. And the German was not at all impressed. So this yogi asked, oh, you're not impressed? He said, what is this? We've already created boats. We already have boats. What you're doing with your 20 years of penance, now anyone and everyone can sit on a boat and travel. So Prabhupada talks about different mystic opulence, where Prabhupada says there are certain mystic siddhis by which person's body becomes so light that he could fly in the sky. And Prabhupada says the material advancement has already given us planes that people can fly in the sky. Different aspect, different siddhis Prabhupada talk about. So Prabhupada said, even having this mystical siddhis, or let's say material advancement, the world is, a lot of advancement is there is certain type of comfort. Everything is temporary. It just cannot give you that eternal happiness which comes from the practice of Krishna consciousness. And how do we understand this? A simple example of positive axis, negative axis, and zero axis. Our material happiness, the nature of material happiness is negative axis, which means whatever happiness we are trying to get through our sense engagement in the material things, it could never give you happiness because it always remains on negative axis. Remember we discussed previously, I believe, our happiness in this world is equivalent to our suffering. The greater the thirst, to that degree we find satisfaction in drinking water. Yes, we have discussed the subject here. The more hungry you are, to that degree you'll appreciate the food. So that is called as material happiness, which is always on the negative axis. Then comes the zero, which is the realization I'm not the body but spirit, soul, and impersonal realization. But that is also not happiness, that is just negation of suffering. And then comes Krishna conscious happiness, which is positive axis. Positive axis, where now a person begins to experience happiness, and that level of happiness one drop, Srila Rupa Goswami writes, the one drop of happiness or bliss which is experienced in Krishna consciousness is far greater than the oceans of material happiness. Just the one drop of spiritual happiness. Like this, the subject matter is discussed by Srila Prabhupada. Going back to the slide deck. So, all auspiciousness, Subhada. When does it take place? I'll quickly sum up and come to the Moksha Lagatakrit. So, Subhada takes place when the suffering decreases. And what is it? When following criteria are met, it is auspicious, which means only devotional service meets this criteria. It attracts everyone. Sadguna, development of saintly qualities, superior happiness. And then Prabhupada talks about here, this is not exactly the flow of the presentation as with the writings. Then Prabhupada, in the next page in your book, begins to talk about mystic perfections. So let's read from the next page, and then I'll come back to the slide deck. In the next paragraph, the mystic perfections achieved by actually successful yogis are 8 in number. Please read out from here.
Hare Krishna, can I read, Prabhuji?
Yes, Mother, please read.
The mystic perfections achieved by actually successful yogis are 8 in number. Anima Siddhi refers to the power by which one can become so small that he can enter into a stone. Modern scientific improvements also enable us to enter into stone because they provide for excavating so many subways, penetrating the hills, etc. So Anima Siddhi, the mystic perfection of trying to enter into stone, has also been achieved by material science. Similarly, all of the yogic siddhis or perfections are material arts. For example, in one yoga siddhi, there is development of the power to become so light that one can float in the air or on water. That is also being performed by the modern scientists. They are flying in the air, they are floating on the surface of water, and they are traveling under the water. Should I continue?
Yes, please. Next paragraph.
After comparing all these mystic yoga siddhis to the materialistic perfections, we find that the materialistic scientists strive for the same perfection. So actually, there is no difference between mystic perfection and materialistic perfection. A German scholar once said that the so-called yoga perfections had already been achieved by the modern scientists, and so he was not concerned with them. He intelligently went to India to learn how he could understand the eternal relationship with the Supreme Lord by means of Bhakti Yoga devotional service.
Hare Krishna.
Of course.
So Prabhupada continues the discussion ahead after describing what the scientists have already matched with the mystic yoga of perfections. Then Prabhupada in the next 1 or 2 paragraphs talk about what scientists have not yet discovered. Certain mystic opulences like Laghima, Prapti, etc. In one of the lectures, Srila Prabhupada was once recollecting one such experience with one yogi back in Calcutta. There was a yogi in Calcutta who would come down and sit naked in the middle of the street. So the policemen were very disturbed under the British rule, so that they really warned him several times, but he would not get up. So this person was arrested and put behind the bar. But because he was a great yogi, he had some siddhis. What he did, he reduced himself, made it thin enough to, pass through the keyhole. And he came out, he escaped from the prison. So he was captured and put behind the prison bar the previous evening, and next morning again, he's there at the same spot, sitting all naked. So everyone was amazed, they were surprised. So he was arrested thrice. And the 4th time, the British government said, let him do what he wants to do because we cannot arrest him only. So there are many examples like, Srila Prabhupada quoted from his own experiences. So that's what is being mentioned here. So the point here is, which is being discussed here, and yes, one of the thing will be mentioned, that either be mystic opulence or the sense gratification or even the desire of moksha cannot satisfy a devotee. And Srila Prabhupada ahead gives an example of Kola Vecha Sridhar. Before we take an example of Kola Vecha Sridhar, please go to next page. There is one particular mystic power is mentioned, which is in the third paragraph on the next page. The highest perfection of mystic power is called as Kama Vasa Ita. If you have found it, you can please start reading it.
The highest perfection of mystic power is called Kama Vasayata. This is also magic. But whereas Parakamya power acts to create wonderful effects with the scope of nature, Kama Vasayata permits one to contradict nature, in other words, to do the impossible. Of course, one can derive great amounts of temporary happiness by achieving such yogic materialistic perfection.
Can you imagine the amount of control that this such person would have? He can go against the laws of material nature. Hiranyakashipu had that power. He didn't need a remote to control the temperature of the room. Of course, to some degree, what he was able to control, the modern advancement is able to provide you. Being in your room, in your car, you can control the temperature out there. But he didn't need a remote. Of course, that is just one example. Even that did not satisfy him. Because Prahlad, his son, became a devotee that created such a fear in his heart, which later on became the cause of his own death. So, Prabhupada in the next paragraph continues and he says, only foolish people are attracted to such temporary glitters. So, Mother Sneha, please read out the next paragraph.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Yes.
Foolishly, people are enamored by the glimmer of modern materialistic advancement, are thinking that the Krishna consciousness movement is for less intelligent men. I am better off being busy with my material comforts, maintaining a nice apartment, family, and sex life. These people do not know that at any moment they can be kicked out of their material situation. Due to ignorance, they do not know that real life is eternal. The temporary comforts of the body are not the goal of life, and it is due only to darkest ignorance. That people become enamored of the glimmering advancement of material comforts. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has therefore said that the advancement of material knowledge renders a person more foolish because it causes one to forget his real identity by its glimmer. This is doom for him, because this human form of life is meant for getting out of material contamination.
It's a very important statement, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes. The advancement of material knowledge renders a person more foolish. It looks like a contradictory statement. The advancement of material knowledge or advancement should make us more intelligent. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur says it renders more foolish. I'll give you one example. Remember those days when this, let's say, the Google Assistant on your smartphone. Now, you don't have to type in. You just touch on it and you say, Google, set up alarm for 3 o'clock. Google, do this and do that. If you have observed and noted, subtly it gives you an experience as if you are the supreme controller. As if like Krishna ordering the material energy. Okay, do this and do that. Now you are on your phone ordering Google Assistant. Okay, open the web page. Okay, do this and do that. Now, because we are still practicing Krishna consciousness, we are not so much be fooled by it. But imagine how an ordinary person will think, actually he controls. This idea of controllership becomes more deeply rooted for people like this, isn't it? Where now, on your hands, earlier people had to go and struggle. Just let's say before internet becomes what we have today, people will go and stand in a line. So they had some experience of material inconveniences, isn't it? Now, if there is some experience of material inconvenience, it's only because internet speed is slow. That is the only inconvenience today it is. Otherwise, what inconvenience is there? So if anyone, if today, in today's time, living in a city, if it's complaining of any inconvenience, it's only because his internet was not working or his phone was not getting a good signal. But earlier people who go out, will struggle, they had an experience. So now tell me, because material advancement has happened, because we have got a far better technology, have we defeated the basic problems of life, such as birth, death, old age, and disease? Yes or no? To answer that quickly. Has not been defeated. But you all meet with the people in the society, but people think the modern science will be able to defeat it. Yes or no? They are becoming so much dependent on technology and so much atheistic, thinking that no, see, science has given us so much, we are sure tomorrow we'll be able to defeat death also. We'll become deathless, we'll be able to defeat old age. And in this, they do not understand that in fact we are dying more early than before. The general life expectancy of people, let's say 50 years before, was at least 80 years. Agreed upon? 80 to 90 years? What is the life expectancy today? 60 to 70? Now these days, people living in city, they say, even if I live up to 50, I'll be happy. They are so distressed and they're disturbed in their life. 50 साल भी जी लूंगा मैं काफी हूँ. So everything is going against. Yet the person would say, no, we are advancing. Is that a foolish thing or not? That's the reason Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur is making a point. Prabhupada is quoting here that the advancement of material knowledge renders a person more foolish. He cannot see how he is being cheated. Rather, he thinks he is progressing. It's just like a fire moth who's getting attracted and chasing after the fire and gets burnt. And that is what has happened today with all of us. Mother, continue reading ahead.
This is doom for him because this human form of life is meant for getting out of material contamination. By the advancement of material knowledge, people are becoming more and more entangled in material existence. They have no hope of being liberated from this catastrophe.
So, people are becoming more and more entangled in material existence. They have no hope of being liberated from the catastrophe. Entangled means, how I understand it, Hare Krishna. Okay, so Hare, am I audible to all of you? Okay, there's something happened to the camera. So becoming more entangled, which means they're becoming more dependent on the technology and more dependent on the comforts. Prabhupada says simple living and high thinking. Of course, to whatever comforts are available to us, we can definitely utilize it, use it in, in having a proper life and becoming Krishna conscious. But over dependence on it is not good. Just like, I don't know how much of all of you are aware of it, today's economy is a fuel-based economy. Those who are into the subject of economy, they will understand that. Now, fuel-based economy means everything, your electricity, your cars, that everything run is based on fuel-based. Either it is coal-based from where the energy comes, or it is oil-based, yes? Now, all these resources are into depletion. Sooner or later, they're going to get exhausted. Now, imagine those of you living in a city tomorrow have to travel on a bullock cart. So how many of you think, that's easy, I can make that transition? All those comforts that you had, you didn't have it. Or let's say would not have it from tomorrow. So we have to be conscious and aware of the temporary nature, okay? The comforts that are given to us may not necessarily stay with us forever. So when we are using things, we should be simultaneously aware and ready that even if those things are taken away from me, I'm just not gonna get too much bogged down about it. Because all these material comforts which are given to us today, there's too much comfort actually. In winter you have a heater, central heater. In summers you have a central AC. I remember those days in America, even if before you walk out of your house, if it is summer outside, you switch on your car and switch on your AC. And if it is cold outside, so before you step out of your house, again you switch on your car with the remote and you switch on the heat. So, our body does not get any experience of the outside condition, but we should be careful of it. That's what Prabhupada is saying, it becomes more and more entangled. So now Prabhupada begins to give examples of pure devotees of the Lord. And Prabhupada quotes Hari Bhakti Subhodhya and he quotes Prahlad Maharaj from there. Prahlad Maharaj prays to Lord Nrsimhadev. Mother Rupali, please read out the next paragraph. My dear Lord, the third line.
Hare Krishna. In the Hari Bhakti Subodhaya, it is stated that Prahlad Maharaj, a great devotee of the Lord, prayed to Narsya Deva, the half lion, half man incarnation, as follows. My dear Lord, I repeatedly pray unto your lotus feet that I may simply be stronger in devotional service. I simply pray that my Krishna consciousness may be more strong and steady, because happiness derived out of Krishna consciousness and devotional service is so powerful that with it one can have all the other perfections of religiousness, economic development, sense gratification, and even the attainment of liberation from material existence. Actually, a pure devotee does not aspire after any of these perfections, because the happiness derived from devotional service in Krishna consciousness is so transcendental and so unlimited that no other happiness can compare to it.
All
It is
right.
said that even
So we have discussed that example, which is mentioned in the next few lines. So it is said that happiness in bhakti is so great, it cannot be compared with the happiness from liberation or material comforts. Prabhupada in the next paragraph gives an example. If a principle, if a fact has been shared, there has to be some evidence. And Prabhupada in the next paragraph gives an evidence of Kolavecha Sridhar. All of you are probably familiar with Kolavecha Sridhar's story. Shiva Sangan, Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is performing his Mahaprakash Leela, and he's giving blessings, all his devotees, benedictions, in fact. And there, at that point of time, Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu called for Kolavecha Sridhar. Kolavecha Sridhar was, we'll get to know what kind of a devotee he was, but nobody in the Vaishnava community knew there is some devotee known as Kolavecha Sridhar. So when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, call for Kolavecha Sridhar, everyone said, who is Kolavecha Sridhar? So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, go into that particular direction of the forest and you will hear somebody chanting the holy names of the Lord. That person is Kolavecha Sridhar, call him here. So he was, you can say, even the devotee community didn't knew of him. So insignificant as a devotee or as a person, if you want to call it that way, that even devotee community was not aware of this person. Kolavecha Sridhar was called in. He came and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, here I am, your Supreme Personality Godhead. Ask for any benediction. And Kolavecha Sridhar saw the Supreme Form of the Lord. He was with tears, and the Lord is saying, ask for any benediction. And Kolavecha Sridhar said, my dear Lord. So Kolavecha Sridhar and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had a very intimate relationship. It is mentioned by Vrindavan Das Thakur in Chaitanya Bhagavat that Nimai Pandit or Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu only ate on the banana leaves which were procured by Kolavecha Sridhar. In fact, Nimai Pandit would go to Kolavecha Sridhar, who would sell off banana leaves, would haggle with him over price, would argue over with price, and finally bring banana leaves without even paying anything. And Kolavecha Sridhar was extremely poor. And like that, they had the sweet transactions every day. So when Kolavecha Sridhar saw the supreme form of the Lord or the opulence of the Lord, now imagine you're really poor. He didn't even have another piece of upper cloth. The single piece of cloth had so many knots, because whenever there would be a hole, he'll take the other side and tie a knot. So if somebody is so poor, he didn't even have another pair of utensils, just a single lota. His roof had so many holes, when it would rain, it would just not matter if we have a roof or not have a roof, because the whole small hut would get completely wet because of the rain. Now, a person in such a poverty-stricken condition, and the Supreme Personality Godhead is saying, ask for any benediction. And Kolavecha Sridhar said, my dear Lord, I only have one wish. Let you continue to come and take or steal or argue for or haggle for the prices from me life after life. Let me serve you a banana leaf on which you can honor your prasadam. I don't want anything from you. So this is just a small pastime, which is in essence and just as mentioned by Srila Prabhupada in the next paragraph, to give an evidence that how Kolavecha Sridhar had an opportunity to ask for liberation. He could have once got freed from all his, there was physical suffering. He didn't have anything to eat, didn't have anything to wear, such a poverty-stricken condition. Yet Kolavecha Sridhar didn't ask. He could have asked for any kind of material comfort, yet he didn't ask for that. So Prabhupada gives an example of Kolavecha Sridhar like that. Any example that comes to your mind from the history given in the scriptures where the Lord said, please take some blessing from me, and the devotee said, no, 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 no. And he was also like almost in a similar situation like Kolavecha Sridhar, poverty stricken.
Sudama?
Yes, Sudama. Correct. Agreed. Yes or no? Sudama. And that's the point. So this subject matter which is being discussed becomes more clear when we read about the lives of such great devotees. Then Prabhupada in the next paragraph quotes Narada Pancharatra. So who would like to read the next paragraph? Okay, Mother Vasha, go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
In Narada Pancharatra, it is also said that any person who has developed even a small amount of devotional service doesn't care a fig for any kind of happiness derived from religiousness, economic development, sense gratification, or the 5 kinds of liberation. Any kind of happiness derived from religiousness, economic development, liberation, or sense gratification cannot even dare to enter into the heart of pure devotee. It is stated that as the personal attendant and maid servants of a queen follow the queen with all respects and obeisances, similarly, the joys of religiousness, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation follow the devotional service of the Lord. In other words, a pure devotee does not lack any kind of happiness derived from any sources. He does not want anything but service to Krishna. But even if he should have another desire, the Lord fulfills this without the devotee's asking.
Any example where the devotee had a desire and the Lord fulfilled without even asking?
Sudama.
Yeah, Sudama. Okay, great. We'd already discussed an example of Sudama. Yeah, good example. I was thinking of something else. What else? What other examples? We had a desire.
Arjunacharya wife.
Okay. Dhruva Maharaj. What was that desire of Dhruva Maharaj?
Kingdom.
Okay, kingdom. Okay. What about Dhruva Maharaj thinking about his mother's liberation? He just desired. He just thought about it. And the mother, the Vishnuduta says, hey, look behind. There is another plane which is speeding ahead of you. That is of your mother. She'll reach before you and welcome you there back in Vaikuntha. So, in other words, I really like this last 4 lines. I'll read out again. In other words, a pure devotee does not lack any kind of happiness derived from any source. He does not want anything but service to Krishna. But even if he should have another desire, Lord fulfills this without the devotees asking. So, I have a question for all of you. And with that question, we'll pause and take a break and then resume. So that during the break, if you want, you can churn and think about it. What is preventing us from experiencing such kind of happiness which is being discussed here? We just read the last 3-4 lines, right? What is preventing us from experiencing a true joy of Krishna consciousness? Is that making sense?
Faith.
Oh, okay. You don't have to answer right now. Answer is not that simple. You have to think a little bit. Think a little bit deeper. That's the reason I said I'll give you a break after this. How many of you, first of all, agree that we are not yet at the stage is being described here where a devotee has no other need for happiness because he's truly happy, right? So what is preventing us from experiencing that state of happiness? It is available to us, but we are not able to access, isn't it? So what is preventing us? Srila Rupa Goswami will discuss ahead, but because we're having a discussion right now, so I'll just give a hint on it. So with that, we'll pause here right now. It's 2:15. and we'll take a 10 minutes break. We'll resume at 2:25. Just to sum up our discussion so far, we have discussed so far the qualities of Shubhada, the 4 characteristics of Shubhada, and then we begin to discuss about Moksha Lagatu Krit, how the desire for liberation also becomes insignificant for a devotee. And one aspect of liberation is freedom from all kinds of suffering. In other words, a devotee does not even want freedom from suffering. Getting it point? If you are not able to relate with the word of moksha, another simpler meaning of moksha is freedom from suffering. A devotee does not even want suffering from freedom from suffering. Even we have a personalities who say, give me more suffering. Vipadashantu taha shashvat tatra tatra jagadguru. Now this is totally, what kind of consciousness it is? Just a common day man just cannot understand how somebody can demand for more suffering. Of course, we're not going to discuss that case study. In our case, we already have plenty of troubles right now. So we don't need to ask or make such prayers. But I'm just saying that moksha, which Prabhupada said, in one sense, moksha means freedom from suffering. Devotee does not aspire for that. He is so happy serving Krishna that he's happy wherever he is or wherever he gets an opportunity to serve and remember Krishna. So what is preventing us from accessing that? That's the question. So let's take a break. So we were talking about the quality of Subhada in the previous, just when we started our discussion today. And after that, Kleshagni Subhada Moksha Lagatu Krit. So one of the attribute of Subhada is happiness. Along with that, Srila Prabhupada couples it up with Moksha Lagatu Krit also. So we just read that section, and there it was mentioned in the concluding words of that discussion. It was mentioned that a pure devotee does not lack any kind of happiness derived from any source. He does not want anything but service to Krishna. But even if you should have another desire, the Lord fulfills this without the devotee's asking. So I had asked a question before we took a break. What is preventing us from experiencing this kind of happiness? Mithil Prabhu, your hand is up. Please go ahead.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dhanavad.
Yes, Dhanavad. There is a lot of background noise, Mithil Prabhu. Are you on station?
Yeah. See, Prabhu, what I'm saying, Dhanavad.
Your faith.
Can you hear me, Prabhu, now?
Yeah, there's a lot of background noise. So you're making a point about faith, right? When faith is weak.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, faith in Krishna, we do not believe that he is the supreme personality of God.
Thank
That's
you.
why we are not experiencing.
Okay. Thank you. Madhamaidhini, go ahead.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dhanavad Pranam. Am I audible?
Yes.
Prabhu, here itself it is written that the devotee does not want anything else but service to Krishna, but we have many other desires, so I don't think the ways are staying.
Bhakti Mukti Siddhi Kami. It is mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita. There's a beautiful shlok that talks about it. It says, Krishna Bhakta Nishkama Ataiva Shanta. Nishkama, he does not have any desires, material desire, therefore he is always Shanta. Bhakti Mukti Siddhikami Sakali Ashanta. So one who has desires, bhukti, bhogana, for fulfillment of the desires of the senses, bhukti, mukti, freedom from suffering or impersonal realization or merging in the Lord, bhukti, mukti, siddhi, mystic opulences, ataiv, sakali ashant. Such a person is always ashant, always disturbed. So therefore, Srila Prabhupada here, Srila Rupa Goswami in this discussion was also talking about the subject matter of mystic opulences. As I said when we were discussing it, I'm not going to ask how many of you think you have it or not, but by default we all have this, bhakti, mukti, siddhi. Kami, some desires are always lingering there. So let's go back to the slide deck and continue the discussion from there. So why Krishna conscious happiness is supreme? In essence, Prabhupada makes a point, Krishna conscious happiness in true sense is only eternal. The happiness from senses is temporary, and also the happiness from Brahman realization is temporary, because one will certainly fall down from that platform. Why it is supreme? Srila Prabhupada mentions it includes and excels the pleasures found in other types of happiness. And the quotation was given in the description by Srila Prabhupada, where he mentioned that the one drop of happiness of Krishna consciousness is far greater than the oceans of happiness through sense gratification or moksha. An example was of Kulavecha Sridhar. Hare Krishna. Example was of Kulavecha Sridhar. You can give an example of Sudama, many other examples. Superior happiness. So devotional service is superior to sense gratification, is superior to mystic yoga, is even superior to liberation. How is devotional service greater to all these? We just discussed. First, it is eternal, and second, it also includes the happiness that comes through all different paths. Just like sense gratification, if you just want to think about it or reflect on it, how many of you think and or have thought on the subject, or think that actually devotees are the greatest sense enjoyers? Or to put it this way, I would not say greatest sense enjoyers, but they have the greatest opportunity to enjoy their senses. First of all, how many of you think that is a correct statement, that the devotees have the greatest opportunity to enjoy their senses? How many of you think yes, no? Raise your hands. How many of you say no? कहाँ है? कुछ भी तो खुश नहीं है. There is no happiness only, So, okay. Anyone here would like to justify how devotees have the greatest opportunity to enjoy the senses? Okay. Let's.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Who is speaking? Okay, Mother Manju, please go ahead. So Mother Manju is gonna explain and prove how devotees are the greatest sense enjoyers. All right. Yes, Mother.
Yeah, it's not about enjoying senses, Prabhu, but devotees are the persons who really enjoy the best of prasadam, best of kirtans, and anything you take it for dance, kirtan, or whether it is Krishna Katha, everything is at the supreme they enjoy.
So we are the greatest. We are the greatest sense enjoyer, isn't it? That way.
In Krishna conscious way.
Yeah. Of course. It's all polished. It's all spiritualized. No doubt about it. So correct. That's the point. Our eyes get the feast of taking the darshan of beautiful lordships. Wherever you are, at Mayapur, Vrindavan, Bombay, Pune, Delhi, or different parts of the world, we have so beautiful darshans. Our ears gets the feasting of kirtans, beautiful bhajans written by our acharyas, Narottam Das Thakur, Bhakti Thakur. Our tongue gets the feast of eating delicious Krishna Prasad. Our nose gets to feast by smelling the fragrance offered to the Lord, like that, So I was just discussing this just to bring it to your attention. Devotional service is superior to sense gratification. That was the point we were talking about it. You got it? Here. Oh, sorry, I took it wrong. Pointer option. There's a pointer. So we were discussing this. So similarly, of course, I don't know exactly. I have not thought on the subject matter of how to give you an evidence of mystic yoga and liberation. But the point is, in our day-to-day experience that we have, Krishna consciousness culture is so organized that whatever happiness could be accomplished from all these is already included to it. That's the point. Is that making sense? It is not that because we have taken to Krishna conscious culture, we are being deprived of anything. Not even deprived of sense enjoyment. What to speak of anything else? Is that making sense to all of you? That's the point I wanted to highlight. Let's move forward in the discussion here. How this includes automatically liberated from material world. Senses are engaged in Krishna service. What are the evidences? Tantra Shastra, Jiva is beyond impersonalist happiness. Then Prahlad Maharaj example was given from Hari Bhakta Suhadhyay. Then we had Narad Pancharatra, which quote that devotees does not care even a fig for moksha or like that. And what are the examples which were given to prove that? One was Akola Vecha Sridhar and attendants follow the queen in the last page which we read. So this is what we have discussed so far. Moksha Lagatakrit derives a concept of liberation. It was discussed together, but we'll just take a look at some of the presentation here. Those in pure devotional service, they deride means they do not, it's like a dislike, you can say it, even the concept of liberation. There's a beautiful verse that comes in 3rd canto, 25th chapter, verse number 24. Please, you can recite after me or along with me. Naikatmatam me sprhayanti kechin matpada seva bhivrata matiha ye anyonyato bhagvataha prasajya sabha jayante mama paurashani. Translation. A pure devotee who is attached to the activities of devotional service and who always engages in the service of my lotus feet never desires to become one with me. Such a devotee who is unflinchingly engaged always glorifies my pastimes and activities. So here's my question to all of you. How Krishna conscious joy or happiness is greater than moksha? What is additional in Krishna conscious life which is not there when a person gets moksha? Or even after you get, see, Krishna conscious happiness includes everything. Your sense gratification, your happiness of moksha, everything. So which means there is something superior in Krishna consciousness. So answer is given in the purport to this, but let me ask all of you, what do you think? What is there which is not there in moksha? Even if you get impersonal realization, becoming one with the Lord, becoming one with the Brahman, what is missing? Which is greater in Krishna conscious culture? Mother Medhavni has written something. Exchange of rasa, yes, correct. Exchange of rasa. Relationship with the Lord and service, okay. Rasa and seva. Nitai Pran Prabhu, what else?
It's an opportunity to serve Lord.
Opportunity to serve, okay, agreed to serve. Mother Priya.
Joy which we get after serving the Lord.
Okay, seva, prasadam seva, kirtan seva, all that agreed. Agreed on that. What else? Seva is there. I guess these are the comments also mentioned. See, I don't see comments much because it's difficult for me to manage. So if anyone wants to speak anything else which is missing. Mother Rati Manjari. Who is speaking? Go ahead.
Yeah, Prabhu, I was telling Kunti Maharani was telling that more we become more well in miseries, that is if we are not liberated, then we remember the Lord more. Unlike when we are happy, we might forget the Lord.
Fine, but at the stage of moksha, there is no suffering. So at that stage, what is missing? Anyways, at that stage, there is no suffering. What is missing at that stage? In other words, what additional is there in Krishna consciousness? So we still have some hands up. Yes, mother. Unfortunately, I'm not able to see the cameras of everyone here. So those who ever speak may say their name if they are speaking by themselves. Yes, mother.
I'm speaking, Reena.
Yes, mother.
I feel that it is the reciprocal love of Krishna.
Correct. The very first answer was rasa, is the same thing. Great. Arey, you all are missing out the very fundamental thing. Okay. Engagement of the senses. Engagement of all our senses.
Knowledge of the Lord.
Of course. There is, where will you?
Devotee association.
Okay, devotee association. What?
Unflinching faith.
Happiness.
Of course. Moksha also gives you happiness, right? What is that verse from the 18th chapter, which describes the state? Nakangshati. What is that verse? How it begins? Why am I missing? What is the first word? Brahma Bhuta. Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma. Na sochati na kangshati. So that's already he's happy. Okay. You're missing out one very important thing. Of course, there's no preaching. Yes, Prabhu, boliye. Prabhu Krishna Prabhu.
Greatest happiness.
Oh, what greatest happiness? All right. What is the greatest happiness is the question. Okay, good. All right.
Association with the Lord.
All right.
Greatest happiness.
Fine. Let me give you the answer now. You're missing out the opportunity. Okay. You're missing out the opportunity of what is not there in moksha. You're missing out is Krishna Katha. And you really missed out. All of you missed out. Looks like you had enough of Krishna Katha. You really don't want to hear any more Krishna Katha after going back to Godhead. So none of you even thought of this option only. Okay, Krishna, we have heard enough about you here. Give us a break there. We don't want to hear about you. Krishna Katha.
I said they're preaching or preaching.
Oh, no. Krishna Katha is not preaching.
No, seva includes the hearing, Prabhuji.
Oh.
Seva is inclusive of hearing.
Yeah. I'm a less intelligent person. I need specifics. Okay, now don't justify your answers, okay? You had to give specific. Even if that was the case, then why Prahlad Maharaj would say Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Pada Sevana? He could have said Seva, right? So in your next version of Bhagavatam, we'll have Prahlad Maharaj saying Sevanam. Okay, so there is a purpose behind it. Fine. All right, so let's move forward with our discussion. I hope this subject is clear. Moksha Lagatakrit, we have already read that from Narada Pancharatra, the subject matter that how the maidservants follows behind. We've also read that doesn't care for any fig. We just read this particular paragraph. And now we come to Sudurlabha, how bhakti is rarely achieved. So pure devotional service is described as Sudurlabha. Durlabh is difficult. Sudurlabh, very, very difficult. 7th chapter, Manushyanam Sahasreshu, Kashid Yatate Siddhi, or otherwise Bahunam Janmanam Ante Jnanavan Ma Prapadite Vasudevam Sarvamati Saha Mahatma Sudurlabha. That's what comes Sudurlabha. Very rare. So pure devotional service is rarely achieved. Why it is rarely achieved? Let's take a look in the slide. This is a verse. Prahlad Maharaj says, you can recite along with me or repeat after as you feel comfortable. Mat na Krishne parato swato va mito bhipatyet graha vritanam adam takobhi vishitam tamishram punha punasharvita charvananam. Please read out the translation. Anyone
because
can
of their
Yeah, go ahead.
Because of their uncontrolled senses, persons too addicted to materialistic life make progress towards hellish conditions and repeatedly chew that which has already been chewed. Their inclinations towards Krishna are never aroused, either by the instructions of others, by their own efforts, or by a combination of both.
So to become freed of desires for sense gratification, to become desires for bhukti, mukti, siddhi is not that easy. In other words, unless a person becomes attached to Krishna, genuinely attached to Krishna, unless we develop that stage of rati, attraction for Krishna, natural attraction for Krishna, until then, Krishna does not award. So let's understand it from different perspective. First thing is, bhakti is not acquired. Just like all of you have acquired degrees, right? You will have your engineering degrees, you will have some professional acknowledgements, certifications. It's acquired. Like all of us have acquired a body because of our past activities. Bhakti is not acquired, bhakti is awarded. This needs to be understood categorically. Anything and everything in bhakti is awarded. Seva is not acquired, seva is awarded. We cannot demand it. You may demand it, but if you don't have an adhikar, we will not get it. We have to learn to make this transition from our material way of living and thinking to into the spiritual perspective. Just like Srila Prabhupada, while discussing this incident of in Chaitanya Charitamrita, when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to Gaya to perform the Pindadan, which was an excuse. Primarily, he wanted to meet Ishvara Puri. And then after he took initiation, and after that he came back and he started the Harinam Sankirtan. That was the first time when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu actually took part in Harinam Sankirtan. And he was a totally transformed person. In that incident, in one of the verses, Prabhupada writes, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, although being the Supreme Personality of Godhead, did not initiate the preaching unless he was indicated or directed by his spiritual master. And therefore, Prabhupada writes, therefore, we should follow the same attitude, the same example of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We should render service. I would not say render service in a way when it has been asked, but the devotional service are rendered properly when they are asked of us. Do this. That's the meaning of it. It's not that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu on his own decide to do things like that. Not that way. So, on the subject matter of Sudullabha, Bhakti is awarded. Krishna awards us. And it is entirely prerogative of Krishna. Therein we cannot debate, therein we cannot argue about it. So, but is there any condition, is there any parameter that may influence Krishna? The only parameter is, as Krishna says, or as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu described, Tranadapi Sunichena Tarorapi Shahishnuna Manadena Kirtanya Sadhari. No Vaishnava Aparad. These are some of the things that we can, think and connect to and understand what may give us mercy of Lord. Now, why Lord has put a situation or condition around where He only has to award it? For everything else, Krishna has created a system of delegation, right? There is a system by which things are delegated. Now, Sudulabha is called Sudulabha because only Krishna awards it. Why Krishna is so careful in awarding bhakti is my question to all of you. Is getting a point here? Why he is not liberal in awarding bhakti? If you take a life of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and take a life of Lord Shri Krishna definitely destroyed demons. He killed demons. But how many examples that we know of where Krishna gave bhakti? How many examples where Krishna awarded bhakti? Handful of it. Maybe let's say Kubja. Krishna awarded. She had got attracted to Krishna because of lustful desires, but Krishna reciprocated because there's a past life story to it. Fast forward to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Before you fast forward to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, on top of it, Krishna said, Sarva dharman parityaja mam ekam sharanam vraja. On top of it, Krishna said, once you fully surrender, and our situation, is it really possible for us to fully surrender? The example of fully surrender is Draupadi, isn't it? She fully surrendered and then Krishna took care. So if you look at Krishna, he has made very stringent rule to whom Krishna can really take care of. And then same Shri Krishna came as Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he just did not bother who you were. And he distributed bhakti, he gave bhakti in abundance to anyone and everyone. So why Krishna has this reservation? Why Krishna is so careful in giving bhakti? Any thoughts on this? Then we'll read out. Sandeep Prabhu, you have a thought on it? Please go ahead.
Krishna is very reserved on that because to his bhaktas, his bhaktas can control him. I mean, his bhaktas, he comes under the control of his bhaktas.
Yes, correct. Why Krishna? Because he becomes subservient to his devotees. Therefore, Krishna is very careful. So let's go to the book and let's please read out. The title or the heading is The Rareness of Pure Devotional Service. Please read. Mother Medhavni, go ahead. If your hand is up for reading, you can read.
Yeah, thank you. The rareness of pure devotional service. In the preliminary phase of spiritual life, there are different kinds of austerities, enhances, and similar processes for attaining self-realization. However, even if an executor of these processes is without any material desire, he still cannot achieve devotional service. And aspiring by oneself alone to achieve devotional service is also not very hopeful, because Krishna does not agree to award devotional service to merely anyone. Krishna can easily offer a person material happiness or even liberation, but he does not agree very easily to award a person engagement in his devotional service. Devotional service can in fact be attained only through the mercy of a pure devotee. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela 19.151, it is said, by the mercy of the spiritual master, who is a pure devotee, and by the mercy of Krishna, one can achieve the platform of devotional service. There is no other way.
Yasya prasada bhagavad prasada yasya prasada nagati kutopi. Ohe Vaishnava Thakura Doyara Sagara Itase Karuna Kori. There are many references and hints given in our Acharya songs. So that's the point. The Sudurlabha thing becomes possible by Krishna's grace or the grace of the pure devotee of the Lord. In the next 3 paragraphs, the references are given from Tantra Shastra, where Lord Shiva speaks to Sati. The same point that everything is possible, but nobody by one's own endeavor can achieve devotional service. In the second reference, which is from Prahlad Maharaj, the second reference is where Prahlad Maharaj says, only if one is blessed by the dust of a pure devotee of the Lord, pure bhakti can be given or can be awarded. And in the third reference, in the next paragraph, 5th canto, 6th chapter, verse number 18, Narada speaks to Yudhishthir. The conclusion of that, let's read out this third reference. Nitai Prabhu, go ahead, if your hand is up for reading. The third reference in the 5th canto. Yes, Mother.
In the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 6th chapter, verse 18, Narada also says to Yudhishthir, my dear king, it is Lord Krishna known as Mukunda, who is the eternal protector of the Pandavas and the Yadus. He is also your spiritual master and instructor in every respect. He is the only worshipable God for you. He is very dear and affectionate, and he is the director of all your activities, both individual and familial. And what's more, he sometimes carries out your orders as if he were your messenger. My dear king, how very fortunate you are, because for others all these favors given to you by the Supreme Lord would not even be dreamt of. The purport of this verse is that the Lord easily offers liberation, but he rarely agrees to offer a soul devotional service, because by devotional service the Lord himself becomes purchased by the devotee.
That's the idea about Sudurlabha. Let's go back to the slide deck. Cannot be achieved by one's own efforts. We have already read that preliminary phase. This is from the book itself. Krishna really awards it. Why? Because Krishna becomes purchased by the devotee. He becomes subservient to a devotee. And just to quote one example of Sudurlabha really achieved, this is one of my favorite stories Does anyone know who do you see on the your screen right now? Just to know that if you remember or have heard about this great personality, you can type in the chat box if in case you recognize who is the person on the screen. Nobody could recognize? All right. Let me give you a hint. This is from Tirupati, Tirumala.
One of the Alvars, sir?
No, mother, not Alvaras. Not Agastya. How many have been to Tirumala? Your darshan of Tirumala is not complete if you don't know, have not gone to this ashram. This is a story of Hathi Ram Baba. Every morning at Tirumala to Balaji, the morning offering, the sweet rice which is offered to the Lordship, is prepared at the ashram of Hathi Ram Baba. And from there, offering goes, and that has been first offering to the Lord is made by the disciples or the followers of in the lineage of Hathi Ram Baba. Long story short, Hathi Ram Baba was from North India, was a great devotee of Lord Ram. His name was not Hathi Ram Baba, his name was something else. He came, he had heard about Tirumala, Srinivas Govinda, Venkramana Govinda, Balaji Bhagwan. So he came, and he came to Tirumala. This is hundreds of years before story. And when he came there, and when he saw the Lord's beauty, he was so attracted that he would stand for hours together. We're talking about rati, right? Attraction. There has to be an attraction. He would stand in front of the, this is those days when all this system of line was not there. You could peacefully go and take darshan of the Lord. He would stand in the temple for hours together. So because he was a new man, he had come from a different part, so the security guard became a little cautious about him. So they thought this person is actually eyeing at all the expensive ornaments on the body of Lord Venkatesh. So the Pandits or the chief there, they spoke to the security guard and they decided not to allow this man anymore into the temple. So the next morning he went there, the security guards did not allow him to go and take darshan of the Lord. He tried once, he tried twice, thrice. Now suddenly he's just not being allowed to take darshan. He became very, very sad. He said, how would I live without taking darshan of the Lord? He went back to his, wherever he was staying. He didn't have an ashram and all that. He was staying somewhere out there in Tirumala. And he began to cry. He began to think about, what would I do? I have not got the darshan. So he was so restless that he would not get a sleep in the night. He became so restless that I have not taken a darshan of the Lord that he could not sleep in the night. A little bit details could be here and there. So it's described that how one evening late in the night there was a knock on the door on whichever ashram he was staying, and there was a young boy, very beautiful boy was there, and who came and said, Baba, I have come here to play with you Chaucer. We call it a card game or whatever. I've come to play with you that. And they begin to play like this. And every night this young boy will come, and this Baba was so enamored by the beauty, whole night they'll stay and play. And when it was a time for Mangalati, the dice game. That's a better way to say, not the card game, the dice game. When it was a time for Mangalati, this young boy will go away. So one day the young boy came and he went away when it was time for Mangalati, and he left his very expensive necklace there. And on that morning, when the temple pujari opened the altar, to their utter shock, Balaji's most expensive necklace was missing. And they was frightened. Who stole? The security guards are looking all over the place. And this message came to this Babaji's ears that a very expensive necklace of Srinivas Govinda Balaji is missing. So he realized that there is a very expensive necklace lying with him on the table where he would play the dice game. So he thought maybe it could be of the Lord. He went back and gave it to the pujaris, who indeed thought he is a thief. And they put him behind the prison bar. Long story short, I'm cutting out the story and the details of it. And then the matter was brought to the king's notice, and this particular simple-hearted Baba narrated the whole story that actually I did not steal it. there was a young boy who would come and who actually adorned this necklace, and right at the Brahma Muhurta time, he'll go back, which was obvious to everyone by now that our Balaji was coming and playing Chaucer with his Babaji. Now, nobody was willing to believe. When King heard it, King was amazed that there has to be such a great devotion that the Lord is coming out, because he was not allowed darshan of the Lord. The Lord left the altar. He came out and started playing game with him. So he said, okay, all right. Well, I have to perform my duty, so I would have a small test for you. We'll put you in the prison and we'll lock you up with a huge amount of sugar cane. If your Lord used to come and play with you at your place, let the Lord come into the prison house and eat up all the sugar cane. Because Lord can do anything. So he can come and meet you in the prison house and eat all the sugar cane. So this Babaji said, all right, whatever it is you desire, whatever the wish of the Balaji, he went, he was put behind the prison bar, filled with a huge amount of sugar cane. And right in the middle of the night, a huge elephant appeared from nowhere in the prison house, where this Babaji was there. He ate up the whole sugar cane, and when Babaji saw this, he began to call out, Hati Ram, Hati Ram, Hati Ram. He was a devotee of Lord Ram, and his Ram has come in the form of Hati. Hati Ram, Hati Ram, Hati Ram. In the meantime, elephant, after eating up the whole sugar cane, lifted the trunk and made a huge sound, because of which all the sleeping security guards woke up. They realized there is an elephant in the prison cell. They went running there, and they saw the huge elephant who was eaten up all the sugar cane, and this Babaji is lying on the ground and saying, Hati Ram, Hati Ram. When they opened the cell just to catch hold of the elephant, that elephant broke through the prison and he ran away. The message was sent to the king. The king came running there, and then the king came here and he saw the Babaji is still in ecstasy calling Hati Ram, Hati Ram. And the king came and offered his respect, and he acknowledged that actually Balaji was himself coming and playing with you. And because of that incident, he got the name of Hati Ram Babaji. And because he was not allowed to even take darshan of the Lord, so king said, I have done a great offense to you. Please allow me to repent. Please tell me how I can serve you. So he said, I should be given an opportunity to wake up the deities in the form. I should be allowed to make the first offering to the Lord. So for the first time in Tirumala, we have the disciples, followers of Hatiram Babaji. They are allowed only, except for the pujaris who worship there, the offering goes from Hatiram Babaji's ashram. And he was also given a place by the king at Tirumala, which is right next close to the temple. There's a nice, very beautiful ashram which is there. So I just quoted the story in a context of one particular thing which attracted Lord to this devotee. Can anyone just say that one thing? What was that? The doorkeepers, the security guard said, no, you cannot come and take darshan. And the Lord appeared to him. The Lord came to him. What was that one thing? It was his incessant desire or, attraction towards the Lord, his rati, his attraction. So, sudurlabha. Yes, it's sudurlabh. It does not mean it's impossible. Okay? Please don't get demoralized or discouraged. It's sudurlabh. It does not mean it's impossible. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu have made it far much possible today, no doubt about it, through his incarnation. But the point is, what we require is to cultivate that rati and attraction. And how do we cultivate rati and attraction would be discussion on the next week when we begin the chapter 2. All right, so let's move forward from here. That's the subject matter, derives happiness of liberation. So I'm skipping through this chart, Sudullabha. Let's go to the next subject matter, which comes now to the fifth item of the characteristics titled as Sandarananda Vishesh Atma. Sandarananda, Ananda, the happiness which is there at the level of, pure devotional service or pure bhakti is so condensed, Just like if you have an experience of making a barfi, milk has some water, isn't it? When you boil the milk, and you keep stirring the milk, all the water evaporates. And you have to keep stirring it for hours together, and then it becomes really thick. That is what the example, or that is what the meaning of this Sandarananda Visheshatma. So thick, there is no thought itself. Forget about action. There is not even a thought about sense gratification. Are you getting the point? The happiness, the nature of happiness at this stage is so thick, not even a thought for sense gratification arises. So let's take a look. Incalculable condensed bliss. So there are three levels of happiness which have been discussed so far. First, at the level of the characteristic of Subhadha. One of the fourth feature of Shubhada was happiness. So the stage of Shubhada appears in Sadhana Bhakti, which is superior to happiness of sense gratification or liberation. So Shubhada, all auspiciousness. Then the second level of happiness was discussed as the stage of Bhava Bhakti, which is Moksha Lagutkrit. So superior that it minimizes the value of sense gratification or liberation. What it means, at the stage of Shubhada, the happiness is this level, which is far greater, quite greater, you can say, greater than the happiness of sense pleasure. But when you talk about Bhava Bhakti, which is because of the Moksha Lagutukrit, it's exponentially high. The thoughts may run through, but there is no more attraction for sense gratification. And now, when we are talking about Sandharananda Visheshatma, which is at the stage of Prema Bhakti, that the thought of sense gratification itself does not exist. And where it happens at the stage of Prema Bhakti. That is this Sandharananda Visheshatma. And then we come to the last subject matter. So there are 6 characteristics. Kleshagni Subhada, this manifests in Sadhana Bhakti. Moksha Ladukrit Sudurlabha manifests at Bhava Bhakti. Sandharananda Visheshatma and Sri Krishna Akrishni, which is the last subject matter, or the last characteristic, manifests at the stage of Prema Bhakti. These 2 characteristics. What is Sri Krishna Akarshani? Akarshan, which even attracts Sri Krishna. The nature of bhakti is such that even Krishna becomes attracted. And the best example is of Srimati Radharani. We'll discuss it in 2 parts. First of all, let's briefly talk about Srimati Radharani and then we'll a little bit look into details. Then an example, all of you probably would have heard, all of you are aware, all of you would have gone to Vrindavan, I'm pretty sure. So there is a place called as Ter Kadamba, right? That is a place, one of the Rasasthali, it is described. There's a pastime comes how at that place once Cupid had come. And is called as Pushpa Bana. The Mr. Cupid, he throws a Pushpa Bana. And the arrow is of Pushpa, but when it hits you now, the pain is very severe. Whoever gets hit by Cupid. So here it is described how Cupid would attacks. So Cupid attacks by raising his eyebrows. When a Cupid raises his eyebrows, then that Pushpa Ban hits. So when Cupid came in front of Krishna, he tried raising his eyebrows. Before he could raise his eyebrows, when he saw Krishna, he fainted. Seeing Krishna, he fainted. Forget about raising the eyebrows. So Cupid got attracted to Krishna. And then, what had happened actually, when Cupid went in front of Krishna, Cupid was trying to raise his eyebrows. Nothing was happening. And then Krishna raised his eyebrows and then Cupid fainted. Actually, that was an incident that happened. So Krishna raised his eyebrows and then Cupid fainted. All right, fantastic. And then Srimati Radharani enters the scene. And when Radharani looked at Krishna and raised her eyebrows, then Krishna fainted. So this is what it means by Shri Krishna Akarshani. That even the Supreme Personality of Godhead becomes attracted to Srimati Radharani's bhakti, love or devotion. That's the first aspect which we'll speak from Chaitanya Charitamrita briefly. Second is a question. Krishna is Atmaram. Atmaram is self-satisfied. How somebody who's Atmaram could get attracted by somebody else? Is that correct? Yes or no? Krishna is Atmaram. Atmaram is self-satisfied. If you're self-satisfied, then where is a question of you getting attracted to somebody else? There's no question of getting attracted to somebody else. So, how Radharani attracts Krishna? Krishna becomes attracted. Shri Krishna, Krishni, does not make Krishna's Atmaram feature invalid. In other words, how Atmaram Krishna is still Atmaram and Shri Krishna still gets attracted to devotees' bhakti. How it is. So let's take a look at it. Let me see if my Veda base is there before we open. Please read out what you see on the slide deck, somebody. Hare Krishna. Oh, sorry, slide deck is not visible. Yes. All right, my bad. Now slide is visible. Go ahead.
Sri Krishna Akarshini attracts Krishna. To perform devotional service means to follow in the footsteps of Radharani, and devotees in Vrindavan put themselves under the care of Radharani in order to achieve perfection in their devotional life. Being directly under the control of the internal potency of Krishna, devotional service attracts even Krishna himself.
So, a few things that Prabhupada mentions in his description of the subject matter. First is Radharani is the epitome of devotion. She is called as, Krishna is called as, I'm giving you the summary of what Prabhupada has written. Krishna is called as Madan Mohan and Srimati Radharani is called as Madan Mohan Mohini. That's the first paragraph under this. And second paragraph, Prabhupada writes, to perform devotional service means to follow in the footsteps of Srimati Radha Rani and devotees in Vrindavan like that. Another aspect Prabhupada mentions, the devotional service which are rendered are actually not under the purview of Bahiranga Shakti but under the purview of Antaranga Shakti. So, which means under the control of Srimati Radharani. That is called as Daiva Prakriti. And then Prabhupada gives evidences from the 11th canto Srimad Bhagavatam, third paragraph. So let's read this. Somebody please read out. Mother Sri Lakshmi, your hand is up. If you want to read the third paragraph. This fact is corroborated.
This fact is corroborated by Krishna in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 14th chapter, verse 20, where he says, My dear Uddhava, you may know it from me that the attraction I feel for devotional service rendered by my devotees is not to be attained even by the performance of mystic yoga, philosophical speculation, ritualistic sacrifices, the study of Vedanta, the practice of severe austerities, or the giving of everything in charity. These are, of course, very nice activities, but they are not as attractive to me as the transcendental loving service rendered by my devotees.
So, how Krishna becomes attracted by devotional service is described in the next paragraph. Continue, Mother.
How Krishna becomes attracted by the devotional service of his devotees is described by Narada in Srimad Bhagavatam, 7th canto, 10th chapter, verse 48 and 49. There Narada addresses King Yudhishthira while the king is appreciating the glories of the character of Prahlad Maharaja. A devotee always appreciates the activities of other devotees. Yudhishthira Maharaj was appreciating the qualities of Prahlada, and that is one symptom of a pure devotee. A pure devotee never thinks himself great. He always thinks that other devotees are greater than himself. The king was thinking, Prahlad Maharaj is actually a devotee of the Lord, while I am nothing. And while thinking this, he was addressed by Narada as follows. My dear King Yudhishthira, you, the Pandava brothers, are the only fortunate people in this world. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has appeared on this planet and is presenting himself to you as an ordinary human being. He is always with you in all circumstances. He is living with you and covering himself from the eyes of others. Others cannot understand that he is the Supreme Lord, but he is still living with you as your cousin, as your friend, and even as your messenger. Therefore, you must know that nobody in this world is more fortunate than you. In Bhagavad Gita, should we continue from here?
We can read the last 4 lines. I mean, in the last
This
paragraph.
is the proof of how.
Yeah, go ahead.
That is the proof of how great this process of devotional service is. It can attract even the Supreme Personality of Godhead. God is great, but devotional service is greater than God because it attracts Him. People who are not in devotional service can never understand what great value there is in rendering service to the Lord.
So, Srimati Radharani is the epitome of Bhakti. Bhakti is said to be a greater than Lord Shri Krishna. Srimati Radharani attracts Krishna. Krishna is Atmaram. How Atmaram can be attracted to somebody else? For that, we need to understand who is Srimati Radharani. I'll bring your attention for a short while to Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Leela, chapter number 4, verse number 82. Allow me to share my screen so you all can see that quickly. 4.82 will briefly quickly read out something about Srimati Radharani. I hope all of you are able to see. Radha is the one who gives pleasure to Govinda. We have less time, so I'll not read the verses. I'll just read the translation. She is also the enchantress of Govinda. She is the be-all and all of Govinda, the crest jewel of all his concerts. We can read one by one. Somebody else can read it and then another devotee. Please go ahead, somebody. The transcendental goddess.
The transcendental goddess, Srimati Radharani, is the direct counterpart of Lord Shri Krishna. She is the central figure for all the goddesses of fortune. She possesses all the attractiveness to attract the all-attractive personality of Godhead. She is the primeval internal potency of the Lord.
Next devotee. Go ahead.
Devi means resplendent and most beautiful, or else it means the lovely abode of the worship and love sports of Lord Krishna.
Next.
Krishnamai means one who's within and without our Lord Krishna. She sees Lord Krishna wherever she casts her glance.
Okay, verse number 86.
Or Krishnamai means that she is identical with Lord Krishna, for she embodies the mellows of love. The energy of Lord Krishna is identical with him.
Verse number 87.
Her worship.
Continue, Mother.
The worship of Radha consists of fulfilling the desires of Lord Krishna. Therefore, the Puranas call her Radhika.
So the name Radha is derived from the root word Aradhana. Aradhana means worship. So what does the word Radharani means? The personality who excels all in worshipping Krishna is called as Radhika. This is from Srimad Bhagavatam. Truly the personality of Godhead has been worshipped by her. Therefore Lord Govinda, being pleased, has brought her to a lonely spot, leaving us all behind. Text number 89. Please read.
Therefore, Radha is a Paramadevata, the supreme goddess, and she is worshipable for everyone. She is the protectress of all, and she is the mother of the entire universe.
Nitai Pran Prabhu, text number 90.
I have already explained the meaning of Sarva Lakshmi. Radha is the original source of all the goddess of fortune.
Sarva Lakshmi indicates that she fully represents the six opulences of Krishna. Therefore, she is the supreme energy of Lord Shri Krishna. The word Sarvakanti indicates that all beauty and luster rest in her body, and all the Lakshmis derive their beauty from her. And this discussion continues. We'll conclude here with this. Kanti may also mean all the desires of Lord Shri Krishna. All the desires of Lord Krishna rest in Srimati Radharani. In essence, Srimati Radharani is a manifestation from Lord. In other words, she is non-different from the Lord himself. So when it is said Shri Radharani attracts Krishna, in other words, Krishna is attracted to himself. Because Radharani is non-different than Krishna, then the rule or the principle of Atmaram cannot get attracted to anyone, still holds true. Now, how Krishna can be attracted to another devotee? Krishna is attracted to devotion. And that devotion is epitomized by Srimati Radharani again. That gift of devotion is also Krishna himself in the form of Radharani. You getting the point here? So, Krishna is Atmaram. Yes, he is always Atmaram. Why? Because Radharani, which attracts Krishna, is not different than Krishna himself. He is the same self Krishna manifested as Srimati Radharani. What is Bhakti? Bhakti is nothing but Srimati Radharani. Whatever devotional service we render under the protection of Srimati Radharani. It is her opulence. So the bhakti that is getting inspired within our heart is the gift of Srimati Radharani. And that is how a devotee becomes attracted to Krishna. So it is a love of Krishna invested in the devotee, which in return attracts Krishna further. A simple example, a mother, let's say any one of you, if you prepare a hot chapati and you have your son to serve and you have a beggar on the street, whom would you serve hot chapati? Who would you serve a hot chapati?
First to the son.
Yes, goes to the son, isn't it? Because he's yours. I said hot chapati. I did not say any chapati. So you will first serve to the son. It's but natural. And that is the point of the discussion here. All right. Let's go to the slide deck and conclude the discussion. Shri Krishna Akarshani. Like that. So attract Shri Krishna Akarshani. Lord is self-satisfied and can be attracted only by his own pleasure potency. Prabhupada gives these quotations. Pandavas and Prahlad Maharaj attracted to Krishna. And like that. Srimati Radharani, we discussed about her. She is the greatest devotee who attracts Krishna. Known as Madan Mohan Mohini, she controls devotional service. Devotees in Vrindavan put themselves under her care to achieve perfection. Bhagavad Gita says great souls are under Daivi Prakriti. What is that Daivi Prakriti? That is Srimati Radharani. If under the control of Radharani, devotional service will attract Krishna if it is rendered in this manner. Devotional service means to follow Srimati Radharani's footsteps. With that, this particular chapter concludes. But before that, I'll just like to take one little topic here. Just like we were discussing before, why we are not able to experience the joy of Krishna consciousness. Bhukti Mukti Siddhi Kami, we were talking about it. So very briefly, let's a little bit analyze and discuss on this subject, wherein difference in neophytes bhakti and that of advanced devotees bhakti. This is I heard from his guest Radheshyam Prabhu, so I have just added the discussion which I heard from him on the subject matter of pure devotion service. So he was making a point, I'm repeating it. He said the neophytes bhakti is like banana bhakti. Banana bhakti means banavati bhakti. Now, what is banana bhakti? You take a needle of sense gratification and it can easily penetrate the banana, isn't it? It can easily puncture the banana. That's the point. Now, banana bhakti or banavati bhakti means the devotees at this stage has no taste for hearing and chanting. Just like in the middle of the chanting, a thought for sense gratification will come, he'll just walk away or get distracted entirely. Even if he doesn't walk away, he'll be entirely lost in the thoughts or that particular thought of sense gratification. Imagine you're standing and taking darshan and somebody else walks up in front of you, apparently maybe an attractive person or maybe a film star, then you'll forget Radha Krishna standing on the altar. Your whole attention would be on that person, isn't it? But imagine if you're getting a taste in any activity, whatever happens will not get up. Yes? For example, Krishna Prasadam. And if it is a Sunday feast, Raj Bhog Thali has been served to you. Whatever happens, unless we finish it, let the whole world wait for me, I'll not get up. So wherever there is an attraction, we don't get distracted. But when there is no attraction, we get attracted. That's the point here. So difference in the neophyte bhakti and that of advanced devotees is, let's do a comparison. Consider senses to a magnet and sense objects to iron filling and spiritual objects to wood filling. Okay? So in the case of a neophyte devotee, the sense objects, these senses are like magnet, In the case of a neophyte devotee, if we have an iron filling and wood filling, the sense objects would be like what? For a neophyte devotee, is that making sense? If there are iron filling and a wood filling, so or let's say iron pin and wood pin. So sense object would be like what for a neophyte? Like an iron.
Iron filling?
Yes, iron filling. Just immediately attracts. Our senses gets immediately attracted. When it comes to spiritual object, rules and regulations are needed because we have no attraction for it. But whereas for an advanced devotee, the sense objects are like wood filling, does not get attracted. But when it comes to spiritual objects, it's like iron filling. So that is the difference in our bhakti and that of advanced devotees. It was not an example of somebody else. And why am I discussing it here? We have so far discussed about the characteristics of pure devotion service. Great. But what is our stage of bhakti and where are we starting? We are starting at a neophyte stage where we don't have from the beginning, from the time when we got connected to Krishna consciousness, a natural taste for bhakti. Yes or no? Some devotees are not muted, do need to mute themselves, or the admins can take care. We are not so by nature or naturally attracted to hearing or reading. I'm not saying not now, maybe some of you may be attracted to hearing, reading, or chanting. But if you see around us, there are rules and regulation, isn't it? We take a vow to chant 16 rounds of Hare Krishna Mahamantra. We take a vow to follow 4 regulated principles. For advanced devotee, there is no question of vow. His life cannot be without chanting, reading, and hearing. So now in chapter 2, Srila Rupa Goswami will begin to discuss about sadhana bhakti. Sadhana bhakti, where a bhakti is performed under rules and regulation. We don't have yet that natural taste for bhakti, but under the guidance of a spiritual master, Shiksha Guru, Diksha Guru, or teachers, we follow the rules and regulation, which is called as Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. So all of us begin at neophyte stage. Begin at. Now, some of you could have been rendering devotional service from previous lifetime, so you might have taken devotional service in this lifetime at an advanced stage. But in general, devotional service resumes at neophyte stage because being covered over by ignorance for so long. So now the second chapter onwards goes into a very beautiful discussion of how bhakti, first of all, how somebody accepts bhakti, and then how bhakti manifests to a person and how it grows through the process of Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti to the stage of Raganuga, then Bhava Bhakti and Prema Bhakti. So in general, it begins with Banavati Bhakti or Banana Bhakti, and then gradually when a person follows truthfully the rules and regulation, then he gradually develops attraction and rati, of which the subject matter we have discussed during today's discussion. For an example, if you see on the slide deck, you have Srila Haridas Thakur, a young man being tempted by a very young, beautiful woman. One was a case of prostitute, another was a case of Maya Devi when herself personally came to test Haridas Thakur. Was a young man at that point of time, the senses were strong, the mind is strong, yet Srila Haridas Thakur did not budge even a little. In fact, he turned a prostitute into a devotee, and in fact, he, through his power and purity of chanting, he in fact defeated Maya's influence. And that's the point here. So we'll see this, how a person begins his bhakti from the neophyte stage and how he grows up to become an advanced devotee is the rest of the discussion of our Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu from second chapter to chapter number 19. To conclude for today's discussion, these are the characteristics that we saw: Kleshagni, Shubhada, Mokshalagatakrit, Sudullabha, Sandaranand, and Shri Krishna Kashani. When we meet next time, we'll begin our discussion from Sadhana Bhakti, chapter 2 of Nectar Devotion. With that, we conclude for today. Thank you all for your kind attention. Hare Krishna. Hey, by the way, आप लोग को slide visible था या नहीं? Visible था ना? Okay. I was showing the slide. Okay. So that's the point about it. Any questions, any comments, any clarifications? My request would be, please read out, please continue to read as we are discussing, because this is a summary study which is given by Srila Prabhupada, and there are a lot of technicalities. If you don't keep up with your reading as we are discussing, you might find it difficult if you plan to do one night out before the exam. This is not the book of, studying just a night before your exam. So please make sure that. Okay, so we do have some hands up. Sandeep Prabhu, please go ahead.
What I was saying is that we mentioned that Krishna does not give the bhakti so easily.
Recording in progress.
So just wanted to understand that, but Krishna also wants us to come back.
Very much.
To his. So then why this reluctance? He should pick us up if we raise one hand towards him. So
now, as we discussed, the same Lord Shri Krishna, appeared as Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he gave access to bhakti, the pure love, to one and all without any discrimination. Now, simultaneously, Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is not different than Krishna, isn't it? Now, Lord Shri Krishna is careful. He does not want to give it bhakti to any unqualified person because he gets, won over by that devotee. Otherwise, Gauranga, Krishna becomes subordinate to that devotee. So, adhikar is a subject matter of adhikar. So, Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared, he gave it to one for all with a condition, just like he told Jagai and Madai. All right, I'm willing to relieve you from all your past reactions, but you have to promise. What is the promise? Does anyone know what was the thing that Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked and told Jagai and Madai before awarding the pure love of Godhead? They were the most sinful people. Yet they were given access to Vraja Bhakti. Can you imagine? To such a sinful people who were actually supposed to be given hellish entry, and they got Vraja Bhakti. What was the condition? And the condition was, do not repeat your sinful acts. Live a pure life. Of course, do the process of bhakti, no doubt about it, but do not repeat the sinful acts that you have done. And by simultaneously you perform bhakti, all what you have done in the past will get purified and you become qualified to enter. And how do you enter? Follow into the footsteps of Vrindavan devotees, which will be a Raganuga bhakti, which will be discussed later on. Making sense now? So, if you see, for all of us, it has been made so easy, isn't it? All of us are able to take to bhakti. But we need to develop that rati, attraction. Krishna is saying, Krishna says, ye yatamam prapadyante, isn't it? Tam sataya bhajamiham. As you approach me, I reciprocate. If we want Krishna, Krishna will give himself. But if we don't want Krishna, we call Krishna, but we want Krishna's energy, then how do we accept Krishna will give himself? Isn't it? That's how it is explained, okay? Mother Sneha.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes.
Prabhuji, you had mentioned a point saying that seva is not acquired but awarded.
Yes.
So, and you had also said that, we should best do the seva when somebody says do it, like you do the seva. So I want to understand, like, if we take an initiative to do a seva, like if we are asking somebody that I want to do the seva, is the seva available? So isn't it a part of enthusiasm for service, or, how do we take it as?
See, it's a part of enthusiasm as long as when you ask for initiative, if a devotee says no, you should not do it. Despite that, you remain enthusiastic. Then it was a right attitude. You getting a point? But if that initiative was because of some other agenda, and then when I was not given permission to do it, and our whole agenda is foiled, then you can understand what would be the state of our consciousness. So taking initiative is totally welcomed, but it should be in the mood of service, wherein you are willing to follow the verdict. If they allow you, fantastic. If they say no, right now you're not ready for it, then we should accept that. So that consciousness and attitude has to be there. Most importantly, of obedience. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu following Ishvara Puri's order means obedience. That was the principle Srila Prabhupada was talking about. So if your authority says, yes, mother, you're ready, you can do it, wonderful. If they say no, you should wait, then it should not be like that disciple of Srila Prabhupada who was chanting 64 rounds or 108 rounds, something like that, or 192 rounds, I believe. And then when Prabhupada, then when his godbrothers told that, Srila Prabhupada does not recommend this kind of a thing, you should do some practical seva. He said, oh, all of you are neophytes, you don't understand my advancement. So he didn't listen to them. So when devotees again forced him, so he said, okay, let me go and ask Srila Prabhupada. He went and asked Srila Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada said, oh, no, you should not do it. You should stick to 16 hours and do some practical seva. This is not going to last for long. So when he came out, devotees were waiting out. So what did Prabhupada say? Prabhupada said, all of you are fools and rascals, you all are neophytes. You all cannot chant more rounds. So you should do 16 rounds of chanting and do practical seva. And devotee said, what about you? He said, well, for me, Prabhupada recognized my advancement, so he, through me, wanted to give message to all of you. So you should not follow what I am doing. You should do a 16 hours of chanting only and do practical seva. He went back, continued to live the austere life, and in the next 6 months, he chanted his Hare Krishna mantra for the rest of his life. Which means after that, he gave up chanting all in all. So initiative was good, but when he was said, okay, this is not right now needed for you, then we should acknowledge. Obedience is the principle. All right, Mother?
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Mother Rati Manjari?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dhamma.
Yes, Mother.
Prabhuji, what are the steps for being determined in Nishta? What are the steps to follow to be determined in Bhakti?
If you say what are the steps to become determined in Bhakti, in simple format, follow the Srila Prabhupada's formula. Morning program, impeccable morning program. Attentive to our best capacity, 16 hours of Hare Krishna Mahamantra. This is all part of the morning program. Hearing Bhagavatam class, following 4 regulative principles, eating Krishna Prasadam only. It will keep on increasing our determination, make us more and more determined, because if we stick to this formula, we are keeping away from all and every kind of sinful activities. And when no more sinful activities are done, or no more sinful reactions are added to our already existing load, existing load is getting anyways removed. So the more we are getting freed from those sinful reactions, the more we become naturally inclined towards Bhakti. And to be able to do so, we should be in association of similar like-minded Vaishnavas. That is what helps in building up our determination. All right, Mother?
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Okay, so we have last hand, Mother Medhavni, yes.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes, Mother.
Prabhuji, I just wanted to ask a question in continuation with what Mataji asked in terms of service. So my query is, if you don't get a distinctive yes, if you get, it's wonderful. But if you don't get a clear no, is it okay to keep following up until we get a clear answer, whether it is
generally
no? Because
so generally, if an answer is not given, we should by default take it for no. Because if there was an affirmation, then affirmation would have come. And why there has been a delay in response is just because the devotee, this is just a culture which is followed everywhere. You can even see in your relationship to your subordinate, wherein you have not said no, although you want to say no, knowing that the other person will not accept it, will further argue back, will further justify. So there, let it be, let it. So point is, unless there is a clear affirmation, we should hold on. We should not assume. And when we are assuming and we are going ahead, which means anyways we didn't care for the affirmation. Because we anyways would do what we want to do. Even if the no would have come, then we would have argued back, justified our case and whatnot. So that's the way it is. So as a congregation, they do have certain freedom to do certain services. They can host a program. Somebody wants to give an online class, can give a class and all that. When temple brahmacharis are concerned, for them, almost everything what they do has to be under the guidance. Now, even for congregation, for that reason, nobody is going to come and ask you, how did you started your independent program like that? That's just not going to be the question. But in general, to be actually really be successful, it is essential and imperative that whatever such outreach activities that we do, it should be under the guidance of someone, if possible. Of course, I understand it's not always possible for congregations. Sometimes congregation stays entirely in a different country, different place. They may not be direct Vaishnava Sangha. They may not have direct touch with spiritual master, but the principle still holds true. Is that making sense?
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Okay, we do have one more hand. Okay, Jai Prabhu. Go ahead. So class has officially ended because we are over time now. Those of you who wish to go, attend to your other activities, you're more than welcome. I just take a few questions which devotees have and conclude. Yes, Jai Prabhu?
Prabhu, this is a question that was there before this. You were mentioning about following Prabhupada's formula. So, in other couple of sessions also you had mentioned this point. Now, after practicing for a certain amount of time, we have an experience that how Prabhupada's morning program is followed in say center or in temple or in yatras. But when it comes to following Prabhupada's formula at home alone, what all should be? Obviously, it is not going to be as strict as it is there on center. But then, principally, it has to be what Prabhupada has recommended. So, when we say morning program, what is there in morning program for someone practicing at home?
Morning program is morning program. Mangalati, Tulsiyati, Nasimahati, Shishashtakam, 10 offenses, 16 rounds of Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Guru Puja may or may not. Guru Vandan may or may not. Darshanarti may or may not, depending on you have deities or not. And then at least a class. This is minimum morning program. Now, there could be some variations into it. Those variations are entirely dependent on the decision of a local mentor, under whom guidance the devotee is working. Because, when you talk about a household or when you talk about devotees who are living outside, there are hundreds of parameters which, bring in differences in each and everyone's life. In ashram, there are no parameters, there's standard parameter. You're there to attend morning program. You're there to perform, devotional service. So there is no much differences. But when it comes to all of your life, there are parameters, so which needs to be considered. And wherein your local mentor or local guide or whoever is your counselor for you in that case has to work out with that. And then we follow that. See, this is what is my morning program for me. All right? Mother Rati Manjari, you have one more question? Go ahead, please.
Yes, Prabhuji, I just wanted to check with you, is there any course on deity worship? Because I have deities at home.
Mother Mayapur organizes it. During the COVID, they did an online course also. So you can go and check out Mayapur Institute of Higher Education, MIHE. They have a website. I'm not sure right now if they're doing it online or not. They have a week-long course. If in case you come back to India, you can go and join that. Wonderful opportunity to learn. North America DT Ministry had also organized. Right now, apart from that, I don't know any other courses, but these two were organized online. Okay?
So it's not happening in Pune?
No, Pune, we don't have it. Pune, we don't have it. We haven't yet got into this. We only have course for pujaris in-house, not for congregation in general like that. Because that requires a dedicated team. That's.
Yes, but if you can organize one.
Yeah. We are struggling with organizing what we have already. I'm so struggling with my life anyways. I fear to give a suggestion. Problem now, when you give a suggestion, then you become the organizer in our temple. So I just stay on hold what I suggest. So, Hari Bol. Okay. Hare Krishna, Danus Pranam. Thank you all for joining it. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Prabhupada Swami ki jai. Srila Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu ki jai.